I was thinking about Ray Comfort. Um, I think he's very wrong in his soteriology. His study of salvation. I think it has a big error in it. Like, I mean, how can you teach that Christ died or to uphold something, to keep something, right? The law, so that you wouldn't have to keep it, and so basically, you get this imputed righteousness and stuff that's not yours and stuff. Um, I mean, there's a big flaw in that. Well, for one thing, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Does God declare you good when you're not? You know, that's a dilemma he has to face because he believes in that atonement. And I think even in Proverbs 20:22, I think it was, basically where, God says, or no, not God, it's basically a proverb that says that it is not just to punish the just. It's actually unrighteous. So for those of you who believe that God punished his son, that's wickedness. Okay? And I would say justice never demands that. But I would say the one major thing that I see with Ray Comfort's entire um, uh, soterology is that I mean, he basically says that through his gospel message is basically saying that um, how should I say it? That basically, like basically, he's saying that the law can justify you, even though that flies in the face of like the gospel and what Paul says, that the law was never meant to justify you. And you get people like Ray Comfort who go out on the street and they say this message that Christ upholds the law. He keeps the law so that you don't have to keep it, and God can just look at you as though you've kept all the law. Like everything's about the law, the law, the law. I mean, we're justified not by the law, but by the righteousness of God. Not the righteousness of the law. In fact, Paul even says that they're two distinct things. They're not the same thing. And like I said, Ray Comfort is wrong on a lot of things. I mean, he believes in hell, which is false. He believes in these wicked atonements, which are false. In the early church, there was no set view on the atonement. Okay? And, yeah, like I said, that one major flaw in his entire soteriology is the fact that he teaches that the law justifies you before God, even though it doesn't, and it never was meant to justify you, nor can it justify you. So that's the silly thing about his ministry and his gospel. That's his version of the gospel, which is ludicrous and insane. And I argue that because he does not actually believe in the gospel, I would say, is a hypocrite because he's guilty of, Christians like him are guilty of unbelief because they don't believe in the gospel. They believe in what was handed down to them, which was handed down to them by whom? By, I would say, heretics. So, yeah, I would say Ray Comfort is a heretic in his own right, and he's a hypocrite. And Christians like him, they're hypocrites. They don't believe. Like the law doesn't justify you, and never can, nor can it, nor will it ever. So that was just some thoughts that I had on Ray Comfort. That I noticed he was saying a lot of these things, bringing down condemnation, even all the things that Jesus said about upholding the law, do this, do that, those kind of things. I mean, Ray forgets, and Christians like him forget that, when he was under the old covenant, when Christ was under the old covenant, he spoke that way because he was under the old covenant, and he was reminding people of the standard. Okay, all things have not yet been fulfilled because he hadn't died on the cross yet. The New Testament hadn't began yet. The new covenant hadn't began yet. That's one little detail that many Christians forget. And you could find these kind of verses about Christ. It just sounds like a legalist. I think you could find these verses in John. I forgot which ones they were. I should have got a list of them. But John, the book of John. A lot of that is based upon Christ's early ministry, which was before the cross. People forget that he said a lot of those things during the old covenant because it was meant for the old covenant. And if you could believe, if you could do this, then you would be saved, or you'll pass from death to life. Those kind of verses. Okay, I mean, he who obeys or does something right, the greater works will he do. Those kind of verses. I don't know about that one. I think that was in a different book. But Christ, when he said those things, he was talking about himself. Only he did the greater work. He rose himself up again, and he's the one that passed from death to life. And because of that, because he did it as man, then all of man shall pass from death to life. So Ray Comfort doesn't know what he's talking about. And like I said, he can preach the law all he wants. He himself is not going to be justified before God using the law. See what I'm saying? It's absurd that these people are. Anyway, I just, if I'm wrong, then you can feel free to try to correct me. But at the end of the day, that is what I remember the gospel was about. And that's what I remember Paul preaching. And so those are just my thoughts. And thank you for watching my video.